Can you speak? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but there's an echo.
There's an echo. Can we do anything for the echo?
The echo is now gone.
Sorry? It's gone. It's gone? No echo anymore. Fine. Is it fine for you? The audio?
Yes, the audio is fine and the video is fine as well. We have just a 2-minute break and we will let you know once we resume. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Now,
Okay, I think we can start now with the next point in the agenda. I would like to welcome Fabio Panetta, ECB Executive Board Member and Chair of the Eurosystem High-Level Task Force on Central Bank Digital Currency. I would like to thank Mr. Panetta for joining us today to present the report on the digital euro, which was published on October the 2nd. The report examines the issuance of a central bank digital currency, the digital euro, from the perspective of the euro system, that is the ECB and the central banks of the EU member states, which use the euro as a currency. At the beginning of the hearing, Mr. Panetta will make an introductory statement of 15 minutes, followed by a question and answer session, which will take the usual format of 2 minutes for the question and 3 minutes for the answer. So I will, just cut it short and give the floor to Mr. Panetta for his introductory remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a nickel. Okay. It's a great pleasure to start our discussion on digital euro with European Parliament and in particular with the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs. The quest to ensure that means of payment are fit for purpose has characterized economic history. In the provision of money by the sovereign, Europe can boast of a primacy dating back to ancient Greece and the Roman era. The search for sound money continued in the dark years of the High Middle Ages, despite the resumption of bartering. In the 8th century, the monetary reform of Charlemagne spread out in many European countries. The evolution of money over the centuries and across different regions has reflected changes in economic life, in technology, and in societal beliefs and behaviors. When Marco Polo visited China in the 13th century, he was shocked to discover paper money, which we now know had already been used there for centuries. He called his creator a perfect alchemist. Today, digitalization is spreading to all areas of our life, including the way we pay. So I do not expect anyone to find the idea of a digital currency as astonishing as Marco Polo found the idea of paper money. Nowadays, central banks are entrusted with the fundamental task of providing citizens with costless access to simple, secure, and risk-free means of payment that can be used on a large scale. Delivering on this task requires central banks to analyze relevant developments in society and adapt accordingly. In order to be able to give Europeans easy access to a safe form of central bank money in a society that is moving increasingly quickly towards digital payments, the ECB's Governing Council has decided to advance work on the possible issuance of a digital euro. Should the need arise, we want to be ready to introduce a digital euro, that is, a form of central bank money that would complement cash, not replace it. Together, these two types of money would be accessible to all, offering greater choice and easier access to ways of paying. After publishing our report on a digital euro on 2 October, we are now in a phase of listening and experimentation. Our exchange today is a key step in this phase and marks the launch of the ECB's public consultation. I will come back to this consultation in a moment, but first I will outline the characteristics of a digital euro as well as the advantages and the challenges it could present. I will also discuss some scenarios that could require the ECB to issue a digital euro. So first of all, the first question we should ask ourselves is, what is a digital euro? We already have an array of choices when it comes to retail payments. Central bank money in the form of cash, commercial bank money, for example, digital bank deposits, and non-bank digital money, such as payment cards. What we do not have is a digital currency that is issued by the central bank and that we can use for all our daily transactions, including in e-commerce. A digital euro would fill this gap. It would be an electronic form of central bank money accessible to all citizens and firms. In other words, a digital equivalent of euro banknotes. It would provide costless access to a simple, risk-free and trusted digital means of payment, accepted throughout the euro area. In the digital era, it would preserve the public good that the euro provides to European citizens. Compared with existing means of digital payments, a digital euro would provide added value in several ways. First of all, it could be used for payments anywhere, by anybody, and at any time, just like cash in the physical world. Second, It would bring simplicity. A digital euro should be designed to be easy to understand, easy to use, and easy to transfer. Regardless of its features or the technology it would be based on, people from all groups in society should be able to use it in their daily lives. This is because making a payment is about more than just exchanging money for goods and services. It is a form of social interaction made possible by money, which has been described as, I'm quoting, the most universal and most efficient system of mutualized trust ever devised, end of quotation. Finally, a digital euro would increase privacy in digital payments thanks to the involvement of the central bank, which, unlike private suppliers of payment services, has no commercial interest related to consumers' data. Ensuring privacy is an essential element of modern democracies and part of our European values. Payments must also respect people's right to privacy in the digital era, and the design of a digital euro would have to respect this principle. This is a core aspect we will look at. Indeed, we have already started exploring possible ways of enhancing privacy. At the same time, payments in a digital euro, just like any form of payment, would have to respect the rules on countering money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and tax evasion. This would enable public authorities to combat any illegal activity more effectively. To summarize, the digital euro would be still a euro, only in digital form. It would both shape and promote the digitalization of payments while reducing the associated risks. This would in turn support the ongoing digitalization and modernization of the European economy. Now, why might we need a digital euro? This is the second fundamental question. A digital euro would be critically important in a number of scenarios, which are analyzed in our report. In particular, it would be needed in the event that citizens become reluctant to use cash as they go digital. This is not the situation we face today. Cash is still the most common way of making retail payments in the euro area. However, its role as a payment instrument is diminishing, in some countries rapidly so, as consumers are increasingly paying electronically. As a proportion of all physical retail payments, cash payments decreased from 79% in 2016 to 73% in 2019. This trend has accelerated during the pandemic, with a vast majority of consumers expecting to continue using digital payments as often as they do now, or even to use them more often in the future. And because of this trend, we may see a further increase in the uptake of international card schemes and solutions such as payment wallets and apps developed by large technology firms. A digital euro would ensure that even in a situation where there is rapid digitalization in the world of payments, sovereign money remains at the core of the European payment system. This would contribute to financial inclusion. It would also shield us from the risk that a private or public digital means of payment issued and controlled from outside the euro area could largely displace existing domestic means of payment. Such a development would raise regulatory and financial stability concerns and could even put at stake Europe's monetary and financial sovereignty. A digital euro would raise legal, technological, and policy questions that we need to address. Let me start with the legal basis. Today, only euro banknotes and coins are legal tender under EU primary law. This means they can be used to pay anywhere in the euro area. Therefore, a key issue discussed in the report is the importance for a digital euro to have legal tender status. Indeed, central bank money is a public good. Euro banknotes fulfill the core function of providing people with risk-free central bank money. It is crucial to ensure that, as a form of public money, a digital euro enjoys universal reach and acceptance, as the legal tender status provides. The introduction of a digital euro also raises technical challenges. Some are related to information technology and cyber risks, which will need to be managed effectively. Others are related to design choices. In this respect, the Eurosystem can leverage the experience gained in past projects that have put us at the frontier of payments. Finally, the design of a digital euro would have to be consistent with key policy objectives. In particular, its design should address the possibility that investors could rapidly move significant amounts of bank deposits into a digital euro, with potential adverse effects on the banking sector and financial stability. We are exploring design strategies to address this and other challenges, and we will assess them in depth. For instance, we could set the necessary incentives through the remuneration of digital euro holdings to make sure that digital euro is an attractive means of payment, not a form of investment. Let me now briefly mention the next steps. Our report also describes the design options we are considering. We will explore all aspects of different options, whether they are technically feasible, whether they comply with the principles and policy objectives of the Eurosystem, and whether they satisfy the needs of prospective users. But introducing a digital euro is more than a technical question. The value of money in both physical and digital forms is rooted into citizens' trust. Acceptance by the public is crucial. For this reason, today we are launching our public consultation. We are seeking feedback on the design and on the financial and social issues surrounding the possible introduction of a digital euro. We welcome everyone's views: citizens, merchants, the non-financial sector, professionals from the financial industry, technology companies, and academics. We encourage everyone to take part. After the public consultation and a period of preparatory work, the ECB's Governing Council will decide towards the middle of 2021 whether to initiate a fully fledged project that should lead us to define the specific characteristics of a digital euro and get ready for a possible launch. This journey will require prudence and perseverance. Let me conclude. Since the introduction of the euro, the European Central Bank has been responsible for preserving citizens' trust in our currency. Today, support for the single currency stands at record high levels. To be successful, a digital euro would also have to enjoy strong support from the public. It would be a digital symbol of progress and integration in Europe, and it would support the international role of the euro. Issuing a digital euro would be relevant for almost everything the European Central Bank does, and it would affect our society as a whole. This is why we are seeking, through the public consultation we are launching today, an intense and open dialogue on our recent report with citizens and other stakeholders. Together with European institutions and authorities, in primis the European Parliament, we will discuss the framework that would be necessary to introduce a digital euro. As co-legislators and representatives of European citizens, you will have a fundamental role to play in the process. I therefore very much look forward to our first exchange today. Thank you for your attention, and I would be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Panetta, for the interesting introductory statement. Now we can move on to the Q&A session. Previously, I forgot to tell you that due to constraints on resources, we already had 2 hours of hearings. We have no interpretation for this exchange of views. So I invite all the speakers to put their questions in English, so we can continue in English only. Now I'll give the floor to Danuta Hübner from EPP.
Thank you, Chair, very much. I hear echo, so probably somebody. Thank you. I hope you did it. Thank you very much for your introduction, which was indeed a good mixture of the technical things, but also of political issues. And my first question to you would be would refer to the global competition, because you were quoted in media recently that you said that for ECB, the motivation for action is not that others are ahead, but that citizens want to move towards digital means of payment. But when you look at the world, and even in Europe, the Riksbank of Sweden, the Swiss National Bank, then China, of course, Russia, everybody is moving. Doesn't it mean that the call for digital innovation, digital currency innovation, is growing faster than you expected? And the follow-up to this is that ECB says in the press release that we should be prepared to issue digital euros should the need arise. And then the need is enumerated. You mean by this that there should be the increase of demand for electronic payment, that there should be also the declining in the use of cash, and there should be also more private and public digital currency globally, which is contradicting what you have said about the global competition. So my question to you is how you can measure all those events that have to take place in the world, that you would identify them as showing that the need really is there. So that's my first question. My second, very briefly, do you see the link between digital euro and the international role of euro as currency, as anchor or whatever you call it, international currency? Is it true that FSB is preparing some guidelines for digital currencies? And could you also, if you could, in general, in responding, also mention which are the payments or types of payments where you would see potentially the biggest improvement with the digital euro? Thank you.
Should I respond?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So the first motivation of our decision to start this project is that we are observing a general trend away from cash and towards electronic payments. The first motivation is that in an economic situation in which consumers, businesses are shifting to increasingly and even more rapidly shifting to electronic payments, we want to be able to provide the service they are requiring from us. And of course, this is not the only reason. There are other reasons that are not have not materialized, other risks that have not materialized today, such as the possibility of a foreign provider of payment services, which could offer products that are apparently in line with the needs of consumers of the European economy, but in practice they are not, because they would not be subject to our regulatory authority. They would not guarantee that their standards in addressing the risk of money laundering, of financing of terrorism or tax evasion are at the standards we would require from a Euro area or European supplier. So we want to be ready for a number of potential scenarios that have not materialized. But given that the implementation and the preparatory work for the issuance of a digital euro is a quite long process, we have to start well in advance. We want to be sure that we are not late in case the need to issue a digital euro will emerge. We are cooperating with global central banks, with the major central banks. We are coordinating, but again, the possibility that our domestic payment instruments are crowded out by foreign players is still a risk. We don't see this risk materializing in the near future. Again, we are starting this project as an evolution, not a revolution. We are trying to accompany the shift towards digital electronic online payments for the European people. I think that the introduction of a digital euro would be beneficial for the international role of the euro, because it would be easier, for example, for our intermediaries to build business models based on the digital euro, which would make them more competitive. And this would in turn make the European financial market more attractive for international investors. So we see a number of advantages that could derive from the introduction of a digital euro. Which sectors, which segments of the payment market would benefit the most? Well, the retail payments, the payments that we all do in our daily life, payments of small amounts. We would give, with the introduction of the digital euro, should it be decided, the possibility to use a costless, risk-free means of payment for daily transactions. And this is something which today is only possible with cash. We have other means of payment, also digital ones, but they are not free and they are not riskless. The digital euro would be the only digital means of payment that would give the possibility to European citizens to use riskless, costless means of payment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the next speaker, Eero Ino-Luoma, SND.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have to say, Mr. Panetta, that your presentation today was very much welcomed and also weighted. This is a really important stage of the history of the euro. It's really important that the consultation which you have launched today is an open one, and it's important that now everyone, he or she, and also all the organizations have the possibility to present their viewpoints and take part to the discussion. The work of the ECB on a central bank digital currency is something which we all here hope that will go well. We know that the ECB is not here alone in the world. We have noticed what China Central Bank has said in the beginning of autumn. They have a very active plans and also plans of going towards the future in a very speed way. Then we know the private sector initiatives. We know what Facebook is doing. Libra is something which is worth of mentioning. For my political group, we think that it's clear a core element of state sovereignty to issue a currency, and it's important that the people of Europe have the possibility to live in digital world by the same security which euro has been providing them for during the earlier years. So it's important to acknowledge what is happening in the world, and perhaps it's also worth of looking what the other possibilities here are. So I would like to still have a little bit closer look at the private sector initiatives and what ECB has said it during earlier times. In your response to a parliamentary question, the ECB underlined its financial stability concerns around Facebook Libra. I fully share these concerns. In a paper earlier this year, the ECB described different scenarios demonstrating that Libra could become an important investor in highly rated short-term government papers, thereby potentially contributing to the scarcity of the safe assets in the euro area. My question to you today is, how do you think that, is there a competitive situation between ECB and these private sector initiatives, and what do you think about the legislative proposal recently launched by the European Commission to address issues around stablecoins and to define them potentially as significant and subject them to supervision of EBA together with national supervisors? And are you confident that the potential financial stability concerns around things like Libra would be sufficiently addressed, or do you see still room for improvement? Thank you.
Mr. Panetta?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, on the consultation, we think that an open consultation in which we will interact with all stakeholders is fundamental, because we want to design the digital euro to be in line with the needs of prospective users. So we are about to engage in a consultation that will be as broad as possible and as intense as possible. Of course, there are undesirable scenarios, as I mentioned before, in which the European payment system would be dominated by foreign payment instruments. This is not something we see in the near future, but we cannot rule out this possibility. And the payment system is a strategic, a critical component of any modern advanced economy. It would be impossible to think of a large, important economic region like the euro area in which payments are dominated by foreign service providers of any nationality. So I can hardly think of such a situation. I think it would be unacceptable in other economic regions. I think it would not be acceptable for the euro area. I think only to the wealth of information which would be available to such foreign providers of service payments. Think of the potential exercise of their market power and the potential extraction of rents from European consumers. Think, for example, at the possible abuse of sensitive information on our corporations. That could be the source of unfair competition. We want to avoid that. We want to retain sovereignty. And in this sense, I confirm that we started our reflection, our analysis, our study, our project on the digital euro, because we see that people are asking digital services also to the central bank, not only from the shops, not only from service providers in other industries, but also from the central bank, from the payment service providers. So we want to accompany this request and to be ready to comply with this request. But of course, there are other scenarios that we are looking at. We will do the utmost to provide a means of payment that is reliable and which is secure, as cash is today. We will do all possible analysis to guarantee that the product we will offer, if and when it will decided to do so, will be up to the job. There are private service providers that are, as you know very well, you mentioned one, but there are others that are, starting their efforts to penetrate into the euro area market. I think that the regulatory proposal by the European Commission is extremely useful. It broadens the area of regulation for crypto assets, including some forms of crypto assets that currently, with the current regulation, would not be regulated. I think that it is reasonable to expect that the expansion or the entry into the euro area market of any provider of payment services based on stable coins, on crypto assets, will not happen until we have adequate regulation in place. I think this is a fundamental condition. I would not personally consider a different strategy by potential suppliers as a friendly strategy. I think it is obvious, does not need any explanation, that before getting new services, we want to be sure that European consumers, European businesses are protected against physiological and pathological developments in the provision of those services. No abuses should be permitted, and the first step to avoid any abuse is proper regulation. The regulation is not there. We very much welcome the move by the European Commission to introduce such regulation. We think it's an appropriate strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, before moving to the next speaker, I know how interesting and fascinating this is, but I need to keep the time, so please let's try to keep to the 2 minutes questions and 3 minutes reply. Caroline Nattegal from Renew.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and also thanks to Mr. Panetta. And first of all, I would like to thank him for starting the discussion on the possible introduction of the digital euro. I think that we should not prejudge on whether or not we should introduce the digital euro, but it's important to at least know our possibilities. Because a digital euro could have benefits in complementing the physical cash, or as, well, let's say, an additional fallback payment system. But at the same time, we should take a close look at the potential disadvantage, and, for example, the risk of creating bank runs during the stress period. So I have 2 practical short questions to Mr. Panetta. And the first one is that right now, most of the European banks have introduced negative interest rates. So is the ECB considering charging negative interest rate on a digital euro bank account? And my second question is, does the ECB take into account also the risk of possible misuse of the digital euro, and for instance with respect to the anti-money laundering? I look forward to your answers. Thank you.
I'm afraid we are, first of all, thank you for this question, because you touched 2 very important points. First of all, on the remuneration of the CBDC. I think we are still at a very early stage. We are not discussing the details on how the digital euro would be, if it will be remunerated. As you know, there are proposals, there are discussions on how to remunerate it, but the remuneration of the digital euro would very much depend on its technical features. For example, if the digital euro would be a better or token-based digital euro, it would be very difficult to remunerate, for example, with variable interest rates. If it is an account-based, then remuneration would be easier, and the possibility to change the remuneration would also be easier. So there are a number of components of the design of the digital euro that should be designed in a general equilibrium. We are discussing, and we do that also in the report, we are discussing the combination of the most relevant characteristics of the digital euro, but in the end, we will have to take a decision after a deeper reflection. Also, after the consultation, because whether the digital euro would be a token-based, better digital euro or an account-based will, for example, depend on the response we get on the consultation. Of course, a better digital euro would lend itself more easily to the protection of privacy, but would have other problems. We will see what are the preferences, the expectations of the general public, and we will discuss the potential design of the digital euro also taking into account those responses. On the potential abuse of the digital euro, of course, it's a fundamental issue. We would never issue a digital euro unless we are 100% sure that it would not be abused by potential criminals for money laundering, for the financing of terrorism, or for tax evasion. That is a prerequisite. The precise way in which we will do it is again related to the design choices that we have not completed yet. But certainly the avoidance of any abuse, especially for criminal activities, is a prerequisite that would be a part of would be top of the agenda in our reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now the next speaker, Antonio Rinaldi, ID.
Mr. Rinaldi, please press the speak button. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Tinagli. Thank you, Mr. Panetta.
Mr. Rinaldi, we cannot hear you. We are refreshing your connection.
Yeah.
I have a problem.
We cannot hear you. No.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I have a problem. The volume. Have a problem.
Antonio, Mr. Rinaldi, can you try to pop up the volume or take off the...
Probably. Now is better.
Much better.
Now
Thank
it's
you.
better. Okay, I'm sorry. So thank you, President Tinagli. I am sorry for my PC system. So, Mr. Fabio Panetta, only two short questions. First question, in the long term, will the euro currency continue to coexist with the digital currency, or will it be overtaken? Second question, will the central bank digital currency issue be subject to ABC monetary policy, or will autonomous artificial intelligence
Sorry, Antonio, the connection is really bad. So now we see you again.
So again, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Fabio Panetta, only two short questions. First question, in the long term, will the euro currency continue to coexist with the digital currency, or will it be overtaken? Second question, will the central bank digital currency issue be subject to ABC monetary policy, or will autonomous artificial intelligence algorithms manage it? Thank you, Mr. Panetta.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rinaldi, for your questions. The first question, whether the digital euro will coexist with cash, with banknotes, the answer is yes, at least until there is demand for cash. One of the motivations of the issuance of a digital euro would be to enhance financial inclusion. So it would be difficult to think of issuing digital euro as long as there are population groups that are not ready, that are not willing to use digital means of payments. So in this sense, as we have explained as clearly as possible, and I will continue to emphasize this, as long as we have demand for cash, we will continue to have both cash and digital euro. The digital euro would be the digital representation of cash. So we intend to keep issuing both for as long as there is demand for both. On the issuance of the digital euro, no, it would not be outsourced to anybody, including to artificial intelligence. The idea is that we will, if and when we will issue a digital euro, we will only shift to a digital instrument we already have today. Today it is made in cash, in the future it will be digital. We will not task anybody, including a robot, including a machine, to issue digital euro. It would be a choice, a policy choice on how much digital euros will be issued in the future by the Governing Council of the European Central Bank. It will be part of our central banking activities that are related to the provision of cash, the functioning of the payment system, our monetary policy, because that's the monetary base. So we will continue to do our job as central bankers with one difference. We will not issue only paper money, but also digital money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the next speaker, Stasis Yakilunas, the Greens.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Panetta, thank you very much for this discussion, very timely discussion. I remember back last year, end of last year, when this question about digital euro central bank digital currency was asked of Christine Lagarde. She answered that we need to rush slowly. So it looks like the pace is picking up, and this report is very timely. This discussion is very good, I think. I also welcome your participation, ECB participation, in the joint report with the 6 other central banks, which was issued last Friday. So we'll discuss that within the framework of the FinTech Working Group at the end of this month. So we'll see, there are many aspects, but I have 2 questions. One of them is quite simple. You mentioned or implied that the money is the payment system is managed through the private institutions, and that's actually the fact. Would it be correct to say that the digital euro is already functioning, but it's issued through credit and also managed by the private institutions? So therefore, it's time to claim that and take into hands of institutions which are state institutions. And the other question is related, it's more theoretical, but the implication is quite strong actually, and the financial crisis, etc. So this business models of the banks, how they manage, they are creating money and maturity, asset liability mismatches, and I think even though it's speculative, the negative interest rate environment, which could continue for years, if not decades, is a problem in itself. So the question is how much the structural problems within the banking system are the part of the motivation to consider or to discuss issuing by the central bank, by you, digital euro. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, you mentioned a statement by President Lagarde. Let me emphasize that in our analysis of the potential issuance of a digital euro, we got total support by President Lagarde. By the way, Christine Lagarde is the engine behind this project. She had already addressed the issue of digital currencies when she was at the IMF, and her support, her encouragement was fundamental to produce our report and to make progress in our analysis of the potential issuance of a digital euro. You mentioned, your first question was whether the digital euro is already with us, only that it is managed by private institutions. Not precisely, almost, because it is true that private institutions are managing digital means of payment, but those are not central bank money. Those are means of payment that are issued, they are liabilities of private financial institutions, banks. Deposits are a digital means of payment. You can transfer your money from your deposit to another member of your family with your PC, but you are transferring commercial bank money. What we are now discussing is whether the central bank should issue its own liability that would be costless. If you want to use cash, you don't have to pay any fees, you don't have to pay any cost to any institution. You can access cash free of any cost. Second, it would be the central bank digital currency riskless. There's no risk of any type. There's no market risk, there's no credit risk. It's central bank money. It is safe. €1 issued by the central bank will be €1 forever, in nominal terms, forever. So it is true that we have already today a digital means of payments. We don't have today a digital liability of the central bank. That, again, sorry to be boring, that would be riskless and costless. Sorry, I wrote your second question, but I cannot read my writing. Can you please repeat your second question?
Mr. Giacaluna, your microphone is open for the second question.
Yes, Mr. Panetta, the question was, the second question, how much the structural deficiencies, all these maturity mismatches which create crisis in the Baltics, that created 20% drop in GDP when the short-term money left to the parent banks in Sweden and other countries, how much these structural problems are the motivation behind discussing and eventually, I hope, issuing the central bank or European Central Bank digital euro? Thank you. That was the question.
Thank you very much. Your question was very clear, but I have to cope with the consequences of aging, so I forgot the question. No, it is not related to potential weaknesses in the financial system. Again, we are not seeking any major change in the financial system. We are seeking to provide potential users the same means of payment they have now, that is cash, but available in digital form. If anything, the discussion by some is that we should pay sufficient attention to avoid problems for the financial sector. And indeed, we are discussing very carefully on how to design the digital euro to avoid an additional source of competition for bank liabilities, for deposits. And we will indeed issue a digital euro under the condition that it would not increase the risk for financial stability, it would not create any challenge to the correct functioning of banks, to the intermediation function of banks. We are aiming at providing a digital means of payment issued by the central bank that would make the functioning of the payment system smoother, more efficient. We are not, we did not start our project because of any potential weakness of the banking sector.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now the next speaker, Dirk Epping from ECR.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Dear Mr. Panetta, what exactly are the advantages of the digital euro, and what effects will the CBDC have on commercial banks? And does the issue of a digital euro fit within the mandate of the ECB? A related question, can the ECB guarantee the privacy of the users of the digital euro? And finally, an important question for daily life. Would the general public get sufficiently acquainted with the digital euro to underpin the much needed trust and acceptance? For example, the average citizen is already acquainted with electronic banking. And what's the difference with the digital banking that you have in mind? Thank you.
Thank you very much. On your first question, well, the alternative we face is very simple. Either we will issue and we will develop products that allow citizens, businesses to use means of payments that are issued in the euro area, or our banks should operate with means of payments, digital means of payments that could be in the future issued by competitors, potential competitors, or foreign countries. So we are in our analysis planning to provide a digital euro, but in a way that would require banks to build their business model to offer services that are based on our digital euro. So we are not aiming at crowding out banks in their operations with their customers. Quite the opposite. Our intention is to provide an additional possibility for banks to offer services that are cheaper and more efficient, based on a digital euro. Privacy. And of course, this is a challenge. But you should consider that European consumers and businesses already today use digital means of payment. And as I mentioned in my introduction, I am sure that privacy would be better protected by the central bank that has no interest in abusing information on users of digital euro than if the digital payment instrument was provided by a private company that, of course, given their very nature, do have commercial interests in using information on their customers. So we are already reflecting on how to do it. We have already published one of our analysis that has been done last year on how to design the cryptographic system and other technical features of the digital euro to protect as much as possible privacy. But of course, then there will be a choice to be made, because if we want 100% protection of privacy, it will be very difficult to be sure that we are preventing in any effective way, for example, any money laundering activity. If you don't know where the money is flowing and from where it is flowing, it will be very difficult to make any checks of legality. So yes, we do the utmost to protect privacy, but where the bar will be set will depend on a number of broader considerations. On the ease of use of the digital euro by consumers. As I said before, we will keep the issuance, if and when it will be decided, of a digital euro in parallel with the issuance of cash. We'll continue to provide cash. And we do understand that the diffusion of digital euro will be a slow process. It will take time. There are some groups of population that may not be able for some time to use a digital euro. But again, we are not going to force anybody to use digital euro by withdrawing cash. Cash will be available, and those who believe that they feel more comfortable, more secure, and they can do their payments more effectively, more cheaply with digital euro, they will have an additional choice. That is the possibility to use, in addition to cash, also digital means of payments, payment issued by the central bank.
Thank you very much. The last speaker, Mr. McManus from GUE.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Panetta. And Chair, look, many of us have concerns about the threat of cryptocurrencies, and as you know, it's not just a matter of consumer protection or criminality or inequality of the crypto economy that we're all aware of. It's what I believe is a very real threat to member states' tax bases and the stability of their economy. And I know we're short on time, so I'll get straight to the nub. What I want to ask is what hope is there that the digital euro would be a transformative initiative for workers or farmers or small businesses? Effectively, are there advantages to ordinary citizens in having the digital euro, and will it be a game changer, or is it just something the ECB feels that, you know, we just need to be in there to ensure we have a market share and a foothold in this expanding economic area? So what I'm asking ultimately is, does Mr Panetta see the digital euro as empowering citizens, making the economy more democratic, or is it just another abstract concept that's irrelevant to most citizens and does very little to diminish the power of the banks over workers and families? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. McManus. I think this is a fundamental question because, as I mentioned in my introduction, the digital euro could only be successful if people accept it. And people will accept it if it is convenient for them to use it. What would be the advantage? Well, based on surveys, a very large fraction of the population already today buys its goods and services online. And today, if you do that, and if you are a consumer, you have to pay. You must have a bank account, you must pay service fees to payment providers. That is the condition to shop online. You want to use services which are provided by private service providers. Well, and you are using, and the merchants that are taking money, means of payments that are not risk-free. What we are studying, what we are examining is the possibility to issue a digital means of payment that would be cost-free. You don't pay to use cash, you will not pay to use a digital euro. You don't take any risk. If you have a banknote in your pocket, you will take no risk if you have a digital euro in your smartphone or in your smart watch or in your computer. So we are providing a means of payment that will expand the possible choices in means of payment by consumers, by providing them with an additional instrument that is, again, let me emphasize this, costless and riskless.
Thank you very much. We have very little time, but I have a request here from the room for a quick catch-the-eye question, so I give the floor to Mr. Castaldo.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, and thanks, of course, to the member of the Executive Board of the European Central Bank, dear Fabio. My heartfelt thanks for your analysis, very precise and exhaustive as usual. Several states are considering developing a digital currency following in the footsteps of private players such as Bitcoin and Facebook. This is because even before the pandemic, about half of European consumers expressed their preference for digital payments. I have two very quick questions for you. The first one, the introduction of a digital currency could lead to sudden large swings from bank deposits to the digital euro. Banks would have to compensate for the loss of a stable source of funding, either by funding themselves more expensively in the markets or by discounting assets with the central bank. If this transition happens too quickly, that could be highly disruptive. In your view, should this consideration push the ECB to adopt an intermediate model of digital currency that allows banks to preserve their role in the payment system? Clearly, the ECB, the second question, would like to have a central bank digital currency ready to defend the euro from encroachment in the eurozone. But the mention of promoting the international role of the euro also suggests that the digital euro issued by the ECB could compete with other currencies abroad. In your opinion, are we entering a new world of currency geopolitics which will hinge on digital currency? Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much for your questions. Very important ones. On the first one, there is indeed a concern on the possibility that the availability of a digital euro could induce savers to shift, especially in crisis periods, from bank deposits to a digital euro. Why? Well, because a digital euro is riskless. In situations of high uncertainty, when the financial system is under pressure and there are tensions and concerns on the stability of the financial system, then savers could decide to move their savings into safer assets such as digital euros. And we are aware of this challenge, and we are discussing possible ways that could address this issue. There are many ways in which you could do it. One is to constrain the quantity, the amount of digital euros that each individual saver could own. Or you could set incentives to discourage large holdings of digital euros so that the digital euro will remain a genuine means of payment and not a form of investment. Because if we all shift €1 from our bank deposit to a digital euro, nothing would happen. If we shift enormous amounts of money from our bank deposits to our digital euro accounts, then the impact on the banking sector could be very different. So you're right, this is an important concern. We are discussing potential ways to face this challenge. On your second question, we do not plan to start the production and the issuance of a digital euro to engage in any geopolitical fight with any foreign country. This is not the objective we have in mind. As I said before, the digital euro is first and foremost a way of providing means of payment which are in line with the expectation and the preferences of European consumers. But it is true that there is an advantage in doing this, that is, we reduce the risk that the opposite situation could emerge. That is, some foreign issuer of digital means of payment could end up by having a very large fraction of the European payment market, and in that way to access very sensitive, critical, policy-relevant information on our payments, extracting rents, exploiting market power. We don't want it. So it is not the motivation behind our project, but the side effect would be that we avoid being in the losing side of this potential competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panetta. We've finished our hearing. I really want to thank you again because, and I want to remind us that the role of policymakers, regulators, authorities is not simply to act, legislate on present issues and problems, but of course preparing for the future, accompanying and be ready for change. This is what we are doing in Europe on several accounts. All the institutions we are working to accompanying the change on climate change, being ready, sustainable growth, digital finance, and digital currency. And I think as Europeans, we should be proud of this kind of work that we are doing and the vision we are putting in our efforts. So thank you so much for your effort. Thank you for sharing this with us today. It was very interesting, and I think now we can close the sitting. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.